we are spiritual beings in a physical body. Our thought creates reality, and we're all connected. And we're all connected. Okay? So I'll say it again. We're spiritual beings in a physical body. Our thought creates reality, and we are all connected. But we also operate through frequency, vibration, and that becomes energy, or more solid, I guess. I think that's how it works. But vibration and frequency, how it works. But vibration and frequency is a scientific thing, a scientific fact, evidently, and that's how we operate in the world. That's how we totally operate. It's all negative and positive energy, you could say, all vibration, all feelings, all emotions, all our input, our energy, our negative and positive thinking, our vibration. Yeah, well, we know what when we say vibration, we say, oh, you've got a good vibe or a bad vibe. Well, it's the same thing, and that's essentially how we operate, because we're spiritual beings in a physical body. Now and we are in an artificially constructed technological world. We are natural spiritual beings in an artificial, technologically controlled system world that is ruled by a godlike entity, as I've said before, that is of that denomination, shall we say. When I say denomination, I mean of that frequency, that technology. The technology is part of the frequency, which is low. Humans are meant to be very high because they're spiritual beings, you see. Even religious people can get that. But it's actually scientific, because when I say it's scientific, even though I have no belief in science. Personally, I don't. But there is to it. But there's also, you know, ignorance and non-truth, even though I'm not a scientist and I don't know more than most of them in a way. But really, you have to keep things very basic and simple. And if I just think very simply, then you know, I sort of realize that, and that is because you become a bit more aware. I'm not at a high frequency, but I am becoming aware of things. And once you become aware, you don't actually have to then go to science so much, because, well, even if you do go to science, you will know whether it's correct or not. You'll know whether it fits your basics, because if you know what things are meant to be basically, then you'll take it from there. But you do have to accept the basics. You do have to say, well, look, am I going to go with something that some top scientist says, or something else, or am I going to go with what I think myself? You know, I don't know. It's up to you, and I'm certainly not going to say that I know more than a scientist, because, you know, they're more intelligent and they're more this and that, but they still could get things wrong, because it's a bit like I've said before. If you're walking down the street and you could be a genius and the most intelligent person in the world, in the same way that I could be, as I am, not that, you know, maybe quite ignorant. But if I see something, if we go down the street and you go one direction, I go another direction, and I see something that totally changes my life and totally opens my eyes up to the world, and you don't, even though you're the genius and more intelligent, I'm actually still going to know more than you, even though I'm not as intelligent and not a scientist, not this, and not a genius or anything. But if you observe something with your own eyes, or you know it to be true because you've experienced it, then that does kind of enlighten you a bit, shall we say, and then you will see things differently, and then you will then build on that, shall we say. And that's essentially what I do. But anyway, before I go any further, I'm mainly making this video because I made another video the other day but I got cut off because when I say I got cut off, there was a great big huge storm, okay? And I just want to talk about that because it's interesting in connection to what I often talk about, that we're spiritual beings, we're in this artificial domain that is controlled by a God entity. It's a video game, everything is there and everything is part of the game. It's all maneuvered and manipulated by the God entity. Of course, he uses humans and other entities to do this. When I say other entities, because different humans, even humans are different. All humans are not all the same in the sense that some are, well, yourself, there's different types of human beings, different personality types even. It's the same thing. So when I say that, I mean some might be less humanitarian, shall we say, because human means a certain thing. We have a concept of what it means to be human, and my concept fits that same conception that you all have, that yes, that as a human you're a spiritual being. By that I mean, even if you don't believe in spiritual stuff, if you're just a person who even occasionally does something for no gain, that is just a bit compassionate or that is a bit enlightening even to yourself or others or whatever, then you're a human being. But if you don't ever experience that or don't ever do that, and all human beings are supposed to be like that, and we all were once, and even not that long ago there were more that are like it, but we now do live in a lot more material technological world, and that is the world of the God that rules around. So therefore a lot of humans have ventured, their mind has gone more to the technological and to the cold intellect, which is separate from spirituality. Logic, intellect, intelligence has nothing to do with spirituality. They're all separate things. I just finish and say this before I go on to what I really was making the video about, because I got interrupted the other day. The title of the video was, which I think other people have said the same thing, where, I was going to say, we're in a world, earth, or planet trap, if you like, whatever you want to say. We're also in a body trap, and we're also in a mind trap. And the spirit has nothing to do with those things. That's a separate thing, even though you can't see it. Some people feel it, but most people dismiss it in today's world. This is the thing, as I did all my life, because we think we are the mind. And the mind really only rules the body. And I agree with that. Other people have said it too, and I agree with that, because that's what I was coming to, that way of thinking myself, because otherwise we would not be kept down so much, but they use the mind to keep the human down from reaching the higher spiritual levels. By that I say the God rules through the body and the mind and the earth, even though the earth also is not really meant to be his in the original concept, because humans are connected to nature, not technology. Therefore they are connected to every living thing, and that includes the earth, everything in it. But I'm not going to go there either, because even those things are manipulated by the God in the present day, because there are humans who do, even though a lot of humans are not that spiritual, they still worry about the earth, because they think, oh, if something happens to the earth, then my home is gone, and then my body and my mind will be hurt and perished, and etc., which is also a trap, because you're only a spirit, really. So actually, whatever happens to the earth, yes, you are connection to the earth. We should be just mentally helping the earth. In our natural state, we wouldn't have to do anything, and nothing bad would have happened to the earth. It's the technology and the change in human beings, which is not their fault, because it is of the environment, but not of the natural environment, and not, it is the technology that does it. But we know that too, so that's a trap too. But the thing is, we did not really invent the technology. The technology is part of the other world. In other words, the other world really, look, there's really two worlds in a way. There is the natural world, which is not as good as what it used to be and not as authentic, and the original world, I believe, The original natural earth, I believe, was long destroyed, okay? But that's what I just think. But it doesn't matter whether it was or not. We still have some natural stuff, but the entity God that rules it has always been a technological God, always. And, you know, he doesn't have any connection to nature, but he's put us here, even though we have connection to nature. He wants us to be connected to technology, which we are, because that way we have more access to him. We have, through technology, we are in contact with the God that rules this earth. But we're spiritual beings, and we're meant to be in contact with nature, okay? So it's a choice. But I mean, could you be both? No, I don't think so. No, because you couldn't be both, because you could fight for nature and still be hooked up to technology, sure, but it would be futile because you wouldn't advance yourself. You would only advance with the technology. So that's the choice humans have, you see. They can go back to what they originally were and be in contact with nature and advance that way to their highest spiritual level. But don't forget, I'm saying we are spiritual beings. So that's the only way we really can advance. But if you don't believe that we're spiritual beings, if you believe we're just a mind and a body, then you go with technology. Okay, that's the choice, really. Okay, but anyway, I was just going to talk about what happened the other day because that's the real reason I made the video. But as usual, I ramble. I can't help it because I don't like making these videos because they're stressful and because I'm actually quite, I've been out of contact with my fellow human beings for most of my life, even though, as I've said, we are really spiritual beings. Our thought creates reality and we're all connected, but I have been disconnected from my entire other spiritual human beings my entire life. So I actually find it hard to make contact now, and I actually find it hard to communicate with them. And I've always been very scared of other human beings in a funny kind of way. So making a video is hard, but I do it because I know that it might just get across to someone, and maybe even though I know there are plenty of other people who make videos, but I do it as much for myself as for the others, because I think that, and I'm going to say this, it has a selfish motive as well as one for anyone else that might listen, even though I don't get any views on the things mainly. But, you know, because I am a spiritual being and have been disconnected for my life and for probably every other life of existence, because I think as spiritual beings, that really means the spirit can't die. It shouldn't die. It should just keep going. That's another difference between technology too, but I think I've mentioned that before. So that's something for people to consider when they make their choices, which I think the choice has already been made for us in a funny kind of way, but that doesn't mean you can't still be aware of it and also you might say, well, if there's a God that rules and he controls everything, of course I should worship him. And he demands that you do, because he's not a God that says you're meant to be free. He's a God that's saying, I'm part of you. I own you to some extent. You must serve me. You must abide by my rules and my regulations that I have set up on this earth. And this earth is very much that way. It's very much a system of rules and things. If you like that system, if you think it protects you and you feel free and happy and think it's a wonderful world, then you are in the right domain. Personally, I think it is the hell domain. And I think anything outside of it would have to be the heaven so-called domain, if you want to look at it that way. Only because if you don't feel that you need the protection of the rules, and that's no disrespect to the God, and you do think that, well, you know what I'm saying anyway, if you do think that, and if you think that the world is, and it is a reverse world, and you say, hey, I don't like everything being in reverse, and I don't like most of what goes on in the world, well, that's another thing to consider too, because you have to say, well, that is, and that is the domain of the God. But also, you do have to say, I'm getting angry here now, and this is not good, but it's negative stuff, and I don't like to get angry. It is such a mind game in this planet that is hard to even prove not only your point or what you're getting at, because there will always be an opposition or a contradiction to even the truth. That is, and it's so frustrating, to be quite frank. It actually drives me insane. So if you think I am, you can, that's okay, because you can't be anything but insane in an insane world. It's a reverse world. It is an insane world, and it makes humans insane, which is natural, because your environment, if it's insane, it will change you to being that way. That's what's happened on this earth. Humans now operate insane, like the God entity that rules. Now, by that I mean, if you have chaotic thinking, if you have thinking that goes against your spiritual nature, thinking and actions that then back it up, which most of the planet is, and then we have a little bit of good thrown in to trick us into believing that we're still free and human. We'll let a few goodies do a few things. They'll even let people say the truth in a video. More people say more truth than me. But I think, and obviously, I'm not one of a prominent type of people that do make videos, very good videos too, where they will be expressing the truth. And I certainly won't mention names, but you should look at them, because you will find at least true history and what's going on in the world, to where you might wake up, because you need to almost look at the world a bit practically to start waking up to it. Unless you've been unlucky enough or lucky enough, depending on how you look at it. I say it's unlucky, but it's lucky in the sense that I wake up, but it's also unlucky if the matrix comes down on you. In other words, it's unlucky if you're shocked to your core, and if you realise how bad the world is, because you're in a war zone. You wake up and you're a bit more aware, which is a good thing, but at the same time you're still in the war zone, so it's worse than before in that sense. So that's how it often is if you do start to wake up. But those that wake up but are still not quite so much in a war zone, shall we say, well, I'm not sure why that would be. That's a question I ask too. I'm like, why are some people able to express the truth without being attacked too much by it? Because, to be quite frank, if the God doesn't like what you're doing and doesn't like what you're saying and doesn't approve, he will get you, because he is all powerful. He rules this domain. He has the technology, he has the means, he has the whole system. And we've given most of that to him too, by the way. It's a free choice, so he cannot be contradicted by any other God, shall we say. And I emphasize that too, because just because you have one God ruling our whole thing doesn't mean that there isn't others. That I'm saying that this God, as far as I know, this is the information I have, rules our world and beyond it. But how much beyond it is another question. Is it this? It's definitely the solar system, as far as my information has come from, and it would probably be beyond that too, or at least certainly other parts of that galaxy, whatever. I don't even know all about the universe. I'm as ignorant as anything, but it could even extend to the entire universe. But I would probably doubt that, but it's possible. But it certainly covers a certain very large area. And either way, the only thing that matters, as I've said before, is our Earth from our point of view, or maybe other places as we get to them, and even that will only happen as the God wants it to. Man does not direct his own destiny on this earth at all. It is all directed by the God. Okay? In other words, if I decide I want to do something, if I decide I want to go to the moon, I will only get there if the God directs me or allows me. Okay? That's how it works. And you can figure that out for yourself. If there is a God entity that rules, of course that is the case. You don't have to see him. Of course there is free will, but the free will is nothing because the God can still stop you, any way he chooses. And he can allow you if it suits, whatever, you know what I mean? Because it's all his system, everything, from the littlest to the smallest. I would emphasise that too, even though I'm sure that even people that talk on these things, apart from me, would probably not say it's not down to the minutest detail. I say it's down to the minutest detail, much more than what even the people who talk about all the different entities and different things that are going on and who rules this and who rules that. They're 100% correct, but or at least I think they are. But it is much more minute than even that. It does get down to a very small scale. The fact that even some of them don't see it because they're looking at the big picture, which is good, because if you don't look at the big picture, you won't know what's going on. So they're the clever ones. But even they probably would not put it down to the minutest things, whereas I'm saying it's basically almost everything. It's total trap in every area, from the smallest thing that happens to you to the biggest thing. Everything is the God's. Everything is set up by him. Everything is maneuvered by him, etc. But anyway, I was making this video, but I get stressed, as you can see, and I'm supposed to be at a high vibration, the opposite, but that's the way it goes. You see, the environment controls the human. If there was no bad environment, by that I don't mean by that the climate and stuff, humans should be controlling that too. I mean just at a personal level even, but that is not happening. It is because the God can manipulate the human thought. So therefore, if I want to create a bright sunny day, I might have that intention and it might be well on the way, but the God can easily intercede to my subconscious and control that thought and turn it into a vast thunderstorm, which is what I was getting at. Because the other night or the other day, well, it was towards night, I started to make the video and I got into it a few minutes or something, and I don't get any viewers, and I don't understand fully these things, but I saw a thing come up on the screen while I was talking, and I just got the magnifying glass, because I don't have glasses, and just put it to the thing, and I could just see that someone had contacted me from out there on the planet, I mean another human being, and had left a little tiny message, which I could hardly read, but they were clearly someone who is a little bit like myself, shall we say, in a similar predicament. I only hope it's not as bad. That's all I can say. But yeah, not too happy in their position in the world. Now, and then immediately after, yes, the thunderstorm started, and even I started, and I'm like, hey, well, there's the God for you. See, he might not have liked that person, because the God will choose. Because he's a God, he will choose who you make company with, who you meet, and you still have a choice. You still have the choice to say, so it's a test as well. That's why the God is very much allowed by the universe, shall we say, or whatever, because humans are spiritual beings, they have a free choice. But yes, he will direct you towards certain individuals, saying, I think this person is suitable for you. This is my choice. And whereas another person, they might say, I don't particularly like that, or I don't want that choice for you, so they will try to diverge you from it. So I'm saying that this is just my interpretation. That particular evening, the God had sort of decided that whoever was contacting me, he was not approving of that connection, so he disrupted it. Okay. Actually, with technology, there's not much you can do about it. So actually, my free choice was a little bit gone there. The God did take over my free choice a little bit. But then again, he would probably say, hey, well, if she was better connected to the internet, my device, she would have been able to perhaps contact that person, because he might have left an address and an email or something. So it's her own fault, because she tries to limit her technology thing and is not set up well enough. And that's true. But see, that's what I say. It's a catch-22 in this world. Whatever you do, you will lose. You cannot beat the archons, as I say. I say the archons because that's a collective term for the god entity and his minions, all the different entities that serve him, shall we say. A bit like you have Napoleon or Alexander the Great, and they have all their armies, okay, and the people that serve them. And that also, or even that whole mindset is the mindset of the God entity. Everything connected to war and control and subservience and all that is very much the systems of the God and the systems of this world, which we use to so-called better our world. You know, like if we think one country is not doing good or something like that, we'll go in and take it over. It's the same, it's that mentality. It's like, we are the gods, we will do this. If we're more powerful, if we have more money, we will do this or that. It's like that. And that is very much the mentality of the God. But at any rate, yes, the God did decide, obviously, that that connection was not to his liking. And so the thunderstorm raged incredibly. It was really, it was actually, I'm not frightened of thunderstorms, but boy, did it make a noise, and boy, did the water teem down just for about an hour or two, and of course that cut off my connection. And I kept talking, to be honest, because I kept making the video for 2.5 hours or something, even though I only got 5 minutes of it actually connected. And I realized I'd lost the connection because I could see that it went, whereas now I can vaguely see my face in the thing. I could not see any movement, but I assumed the vocal was still going, so that's why I kept going. So I kept talking, even though clearly it didn't come out when I actually checked after it. And so that's just an example of what I'm talking about in this world, that the God does interact with us indirectly through technology and through other human beings who serve him, or intentionally or unintentionally. As I've said before, everyone on the earth serves the God mostly, and I would have served him indirectly most of my life, because every time you make a wrong choice, you are serving the God, because he sets up the choices, okay? You're serving that system, that God system. I personally think that the only superior human beings, or at least the ones that are spiritually superior, are the ones that go, and that's what the only reason I always mention Jesus Christ is because whether he existed or not, and I certainly don't think that he represents either way, the Jesus that I think of certainly is not the Jesus of the church, because that is connected to the that's very much connected to the real God that rules this earth, and it's also very much connected to the whole Bible, which is full of a lot of violence and stuff like that, which I don't think the Jesus character, the one that I think of, would have had any connection to that, at least not if you just take the words. But I'm not going to go there. The only reason I use him as an example, and perhaps it's not a good idea even, is for that reason, because I think that he had reached the highest spiritual level. And I've gone off track again. I've lost my thought, the mind parasites, because they come into your mind. As I say, when you're at the low vibration, they can come right in and put a negative thought or even block a thought, etc. Because because it's a God thing. When I say a God thing, it's a control thing. It's you know, because a God can control, a God can do things that you would think are not possible. Humans should be able to be aware of this and do things too.